To start this season, Victor Wembanyama's shot diet was a pretty hot topic of discussion. Through his first 9 games, he was shooting a very impressive 67.9% within 14 feet of the basket, and just a measly 23.2% on shots from further than 14 feet. Yet, of his 138 total shot attempts, 82 of them, or nearly 60%, were on those outside looks, so his shooting splits weren't exactly the prettiest. A 7'4" guy shooting 41% from the field, 23% from 3, and 51.6% true shooting is gonna cause a lot of buzz on social media, where a lot of people were saying he was wrongfully going down the path of a Kevin Durant type of game, when he should really be mimicking the shot profile of a guy like Giannis or Anthony Davis. All of that changed in game number 10 against Utah though, where he shot a scorching 6 of 9 from 3. Then in the next game against Sacramento, 6 of 12 from 3, and most recently against Washington, 8 of 16 from 3 in a career-high 50-point performance. We're finally seeing glimpses of an actualized version of Wemby with his physical tools and potential as a jump shooter coming together, and the discussion is no longer about whether or not his shot diet is sustainable, but rather just how absurd this level of play can get. Although he's still shooting a ton of threes over this recent stretch, it does feel to me like a much larger percentage of his attempts are coming within the flow of the offense. On one of the first plays of the game against the Jazz, they started Wemby in the paint and ran him off a down screen to find some space on the perimeter where he knocks down a triple. And when he's operating away from the ball like a supersized wing, there are 2 things working in his favor. For one, most bigs aren't capable of getting around screens and staying attached to him. Secondly, his movement is really sharp, so he's great at finding space, setting his feet, and letting these jumpers fly. You'll often see him start in the left corner and get brought towards the ball with a pin down. This time Champagnie slips the screen, and the Wizards miscommunicate, so Wemby's left on an island. He draws a hard closeout, up fakes to clear the lane, and attacks that now open space for a trip to the line. I actually think Victor getting these reps as a catch and shoot guy is huge for his development, because if you remember, that was actually one of his weakest attributes as a rookie. Last season, there were 115 players who attempted at least 200 threes off the catch. And of those players, Wemby was dead last in accuracy, making just a measly 28.3%. With the additions of playmakers like CP3 and Stephon Castle, it was pretty clear that heading into this season he'd be operating in more of an off-ball role, but if he remained the league's worst catch-and-shoot guy, that wouldn't be nearly as complimentary as you'd like. And to start this year, that was unfortunately the case. Through 9 games, he made just 7 of 38, or 18.4% of his catch-and-shoot threes. Personally, I'm more intrigued by the rate at which he's been taking them though. As a rookie, he shot just over 3 of these a game. Through those first 9 games of year 2, he was up into the 4s, and in this recent stretch, a huge jump to over 9 attempts per game. I think there are a few factors at play here. Obviously, because he's been hot, he's just simply gonna make more of an effort to seek out and get these shots up. Like I said earlier though, I feel like a majority of his attempts have come within the flow of the offense, and that's because San Antonio's making a more deliberate effort to find him in favorable spots. Many of these looks are coming in early offense, where he's absolutely lethal as a trailer. Most big men are brought up and taught from day one that in transition, you're supposed to drop to the paint first, then worry about everything else. They aren't taught to be ready and waiting for a 7'4" guy to step into top of the key jumpers, especially when considering the range. He's no stranger to pulling from as far out as the logo. Take this play for example. He's just 1 step in from half court when he gets the pass, and Alex Sarr is multiple feet below the 3-point line. Wemby fakes to see how Sarr reacts, and when Sarr holds his ground inside the arc, Wemby decides that's just too much room. Later in that same game, we saw a real similar play with Wemby stepping into a pass as the trailer, but this time when he up fakes, Sarr bites, to which he puts the ball on the deck and gets to the rim. He actually gets defenders with up fakes a lot more consistently than most shooters, and that's a result of his absurd height. If they don't overcommit on closeouts, he'll just shoot right over the top of them like they don't exist. So really, the only way to prevent him from getting these shots off at volume is to stay glued. That's what makes him such a valuable floor spacer. The Wizards rely on Sarr to be their last line of defense as a rim protector, but because he's attached to Wemby up top, he's not in position to help on a drive, and Wesley gets to an easy lay. Same thing when the ball's in Victor's hands. Sarr is right up in his airspace, and look at how wide open the paint is. Vassell cuts into that space, and Wemby finds him for a trip to the free throw line. With the ball in Wemby's hands up top, he's able to serve as both an initiator and floor spacer, and they can utilize that space in the paint in a number of ways, whether that means screening action, cutting, or some high-low with one of their wings posting up a favorable matchup. Like I said though, he spends more of his time playing away from the ball. A lot of times that's as a screener, where he's starting to build some serious chemistry with Chris Paul. CP3's very good at pressuring the big out of pick and roll, especially when they're in a drop, and when Wemby's shooting like he has been, there isn't a more lethal weapon on the pop. The height just simply makes him incontestable. Even when a third defender comes over from the weak side to close that space early, it's basically irrelevant. For how effective he's been as a pick and pop guy though, I'd still say he's most dangerous when rolling, because if he catches the ball anywhere near the basket, it feels like a guaranteed bucket. Even if that just means receiving a pass with a little bit of downhill momentum. Regardless of how many defenders pack the paint, his length and touch allow him to create a good shot. As a result, most defenses try to do everything in their power to not let him catch the ball in these situations. If the big picks up Paul, a third defender is coming over to take away the pass, and that roll gravity plays a huge factor in creating a ton of open threes. Take this play for example. Wemby's gonna slip a ball screen, and Keegan immediately drops from one pass away to play the roll. Castle's left with a wide open three, which misses, only for Wemby to secure a second chance opportunity and throw it down. I'd actually say that the most effective coverage against Wemby as a screener is to switch as much as possible. It has to be timely, and it requires the correct personnel though, or they will attack those mismatches. The mismatch hunting is what makes some teams hesitant to switch. Like on this back screen, Keegan stays glued to Wemby because he doesn't want Keon Ellis to have to switch onto the big man. But in doing that, he doesn't play the cut, and Keldon's got a dunk. It's the same thing when Wemby's the one coming off the back screen. Poole doesn't want him freeing up on a cut, so he sinks into the lane, and Sarr doesn't want that switch, so he continues to chase from behind. 2 on Wemby away from the ball for a brief moment is all it takes for Champagnie to find some open space on the wing and set for a high quality 3. I actually really like the way they use Victor as a weapon off of screens. I already talked about how they'll use him as a movement shooter. Sometimes though, he'll run off of back screens or cross screens to establish post position where he can get into quick scoring moves off the catch. I'd say his back to the basket scoring, even over the first few games of the season, was getting pretty overlooked. He's been very effective. Of course, due to that combination of a high center of gravity and little weight, some wings are able to sit down and really hold their ground, forcing him into tougher looks over the top. But one thing I've really liked is his decisiveness. He receives the entry pass, scans the floor for any double teams, then immediately goes to work with a one dribble spin move that leads to an easy finish. A lot of his post touches come in the middle of the floor like this, putting him in a position to see everything and counter any help. This time he decides to face up, spins into a drive, then throws a no-look kick out to the corner, although Castle's unable to capitalize. This next one starts with the exact same move, except instead of help coming from the corner, they send a late double from the opposite wing. Wemby waits, makes the right read, and the ball gets moved to Champagnie in the corner, this time for 3 points. I've been a huge fan of his decision making from the middle of the floor. If he catches the ball without a shot, a quick pass, or a lane to attack, instead of forcing, he dribbles back out to the perimeter to set up the two-man game with Paul, where the point guard can do what he does best. And you'll notice that whenever he's setting up in the middle of the floor, all eyes are on him. Utah's in the zone here, and notice how not only is Cody Williams putting a body on him, Lowry's aggressively playing the middle, Kessler's aggressively playing the block, and nobody's covering Castle as he steps into a warm-up jumper. It's the same thing whenever he's setting up on an open side of the floor. The double is pretty much instant, and he makes the right read as a playmaker, resulting in a quality three-point shot from the corner. I mentioned his decisiveness. That hasn't only been as a scorer, but as a passer. While establishing position, he notices that Bub Carrington is cheating over, so as soon as he touches the ball, he sends a bullet to Vassell, and by the time Carrington realizes, it's too late to even get a hand up. And he isn't only capable of making these reads from a standstill. If he's left in single coverage at first, he will attack, and if he draws late help, he's quick to find the open man for high percentage offense. I actually don't think he gets nearly enough credit for the type of passer he already is. Most second-year bigs don't have the type of vision to consistently make even the most basic reads, whereas he's making pinpoint skip passes to open shooters on the other side of the court. His height gives him unlimited access to passing angles over the top, he's not afraid to take risks, threading the needle through tight windows, and his teammates certainly reap the benefits. It's fun to see him operate in a more traditional big-like way, because it isn't just what he's capable of doing from the perimeter at his size that makes him a unicorn, but rather how he pairs that with classic center skills. For example, he's a super imposing rim runner in transition. When he's trailing the play, it takes multiple defenders to slow his momentum, then he's a quick enough decision maker and skilled enough passer to find the open man. The Kings found this out the hard way when Sabonis sat down and they went to their smaller unit with Lyles at the 5. Wemby completely destroyed them on the offensive glass, and the Spurs got second chance opportunity after second chance opportunity. If you know anything about second chances, you know how efficient they are for even the worst offenses in the NBA, especially when the guy grabbing them is capable of doing things like this. And if you aren't sold yet, let me remind you that another way to counter having a smaller defender on you as a 7'4" unicorn is to simply spot up from 30 feet out and shoot over the top of them because they can't physically get a proper contest. The key to all of this is offensive versatility. On a play like this, Castle is calling for Wemby to set a ball screen, but instead of doing that, he runs behind him to receive a handoff, and when nobody jumps out, he's got a great look from 3. This is what people mean when they refer to him being a giant with guard skills. He can run pick and roll as a ball handler, and if he draws 2, that height gives him a passing window pretty much every single time. And if he doesn't draw 2, well, good luck finding a big who can get over a screen and stay in front of him as he attacks open space. He's not super explosive or super strong. He is a skilled ball handler though, and that allows him to get near the paint, where his length and touch as a finisher can take care of the rest. Then what we're seeing with his development this year is the addition of some new counters. This one starts with a left-hand drive that gets cut off, so he spins back to his right, only to up fake before stepping through in a very Giannis-esque sequence. Regardless of where he's at on the floor, defenders are pretty much always going to get up in his grill, and that's because of how dangerous his length is when given space to attack. Not only does his handle allow him to create separation on drives, but every now and then you'll get a glimpse of something absolutely terrifying. However, I do want to make it clear that his on-ball game on the perimeter is still very much raw, and it'll probably be a few years before we see this as a consistent form of offense. By virtue of being so tall and lengthy, his handle is pretty loose, and he's prone to a lot more live dribble turnovers. That's one of the reasons he's best suited away from the ball for now. When he tries to do too much as a creator, defenders can get up in his airspace and really limit his ability to get where he wants to go. Another flaw I'd say he still has to work through is his shot selection at times. I'm not a huge fan of these pull-up threes in transition, even if he does make a few, and there are some half-court possessions where it feels like a patient approach would lead to a better shot, but as soon as he feels a breath of fresh air, he's shooting it regardless of where he's at. This has even been a theme over his 3 most recent games, where he's averaging 36 points on 59% from the field. And the fact that he's able to produce such remarkable offensive numbers, even while weeding out some of the errors, to me, makes it all the more impressive and bodes well for his ceiling. Take this play for example. When he catches the ball in the middle of the floor, he quickly draws 2 defenders, and that creates a 2-on-1 on the weak side. I'd love to see a quick swing pass to CP3 to put the defense in rotation. He elects to take the long 2. Or how about this one where he faces up from an open side? You'll notice how Kessler is very aggressively playing the nail, which means Stephon Castle is left with a ton of space to step into a jumper. I'd rather see him move the ball in that situation than go to this one dribble pull-up. That's not to say he's an unwilling passer though. There are also a lot of plays where he has a great idea to get the ball to an open teammate, but the execution just lacks a touch behind. Like on this middle of the floor post-up. He draws 2, patiently waits to see what DeRozan does in the 2-on-1 situation, and the correct read is a skip to the corner. He just happens to telegraph it. Like I said though, I'm actually a fan of these errors because they show how much room he still has for growth. The guy's 20 years old, just had a 3-game stretch of MVP level play, yet still has so many areas to sharpen and trends in the right direction with every passing night. We'll have to wait and see how the catch and shoot game progresses and whether or not he can really be a consistent scoring option off of screens, as a trailer, or in the pick and pop. Because if so, everything is starting to actualize in the way we all expected. The play finishing is sublime, the post game is improving, his passing and activity on the glass are there, which makes it feel even crazier to say that the offense might just be a bonus to his true best attribute as a player. I'm not going to get into the defense today, but I've done extensive breakdowns on that in the past, so if you're interested, I suggest you go check those out. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Wemby. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.